All right, I see our attendees are still climbing in here, but we're going to go ahead and get started just so we have ample amount of time to get everyone's questions answered. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the Frontline Staff Essential Worker Town Hall. Today we are joined by Patrick O'Rourke, Interim Executive Vice Chancellor and Chief Operating Officer, as well as Katherine Erwin, Chief Human Resources Officer. We will start with a brief address from both Pat and Katherine regarding the current state of campus and upcoming plans for spring 2021. After that, we will move into a Q&A period where I will first be asking the pre-submitted questions that we received during registration. At that point, we will invite you to use the Zoom chat feature to type in any additional questions that you may have. So thank you again, and I will hand it over to Pat to get us started.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me? Okay, well, first, wanted to thank you first for inviting me to come here and chat with you today. It really is one of the best parts of what I do when I get the chance to be able to spend some time with all of you and to be able to talk about not only the challenges that we've faced over the past semester, but the successes that we've had and where things are going to be going in the future. And I look forward to taking your questions. I don't want to talk too long up front because it's really more important that I have the opportunity to interact with you about the issues that you care about. But before I do that, I really do need to start by thanking you for what you've done. This group has been with us all year and all through the fall semester. And it's been a roller coaster. I know that we've gone from having some successes to having some challenges to being in places where COVID was in pretty good shape to then facing what are almost like stay-at-home orders. And through it all, the staff has been remarkable. And I don't want to lose sight of the fact that what all of you do every day makes it possible for the university to succeed. It's true that we're not often the ones doing the research, we're not the ones publishing the papers, and that we're not the ones delivering the instruction in the classroom. And a lot of times the focus is on the faculty and the students because of the nature of the work that the university does. But none of that would be possible without all of you and the work that you do to enable the university to be successful. And so if it at any time feels like that people don't notice the work that the staff is doing, please know that it's both recognized and really appreciated. This semester, COVID dominated a lot of our discussions, but it's not the only issue that's going to be important for us. We've gone through and realized that the campus does need to do a lot of work in order to be able to be more just, more equitable, more inclusive, to address issues of race on campus. But it's not just race. We need to create an environment where employees and especially staff feel welcome and like that their voices matter. I really want to try to work so that we can create greater degrees of engagement for our employees, make sure that people feel like they have opportunities and that they get the chance to take advantage of the resources that the campus has. I'm really proud of the fact that we just went through Employee Learning Week in the past few days, and that there were thousands of people who took advantage of the resources that were there. We need to do more of that. We need to be engaged with our staff and make sure that we're doing what we can to develop things for you both in your careers and personally. We're coming into the end of the year, and I want to talk to you about one of my main goals for the months ahead, which is that I'd really like to be able to provide some more certainty. This semester felt like we were going back and forth, that things were in state of constant change. And it probably feels a little bit strange that I'm talking about more certainty the day after we announce that we are pushing back the start of the spring semester and beginning remotely. But we're really doing that with the purpose of understanding where COVID is in the community, what the disease projections are likely to be, and where we sit on the COVID dial, that once we get back to campus, that we're going to be able to stay on campus, that we're going to be able to maintain the continuity of the educational offerings, that we're going to be able to have more certainty about the environment in the buildings and in the residence halls. I know that this is probably something that's causing anxiety. And let me be real clear, which is that we're not planning any big campus-wide layoffs or department-wide layoffs or furloughs because of the changeover to remote instruction and we're hoping that we're all back by February 15th. And if we stay on that plan, we know that we're going to be in a position where we're going to need all of our frontline staff to help us be prepared so that when the campus is up and running, that we're going to be successful. We know that we've got some challenges ahead of us. Earlier in the fall, we did ask each of the units to reduce their budgets, and that includes all of the academic units as well as all of the SRS units. And we know that that has caused some hardship and some anxiety. People are being asked to do more, and we are doing things like trying to not hire as many new people in so that we can maintain the employment of the people that we've got. But there's some good news that the applications for first-year students are way up from where they were last year. It looks like we're beginning to turn the corner on some of the things that were creating budget challenges. And I'm really hopeful for the future. We know we need to provide a great educational and living experience on the campus. And you're a huge part of that, like I talked about earlier. Nothing we do happens without the effort and the dedication of the staff. So as we prepare for the upcoming semester, I hope that you do take time to recharge. Make sure that you do take the leave that you're entitled to. I can't tell you how grateful I am for all that you do and what you do to make the university a better place. And I'm going to have a chance to tell you this again when we get towards the back end, but it's really important to me. And I hope that you and your families do have a wonderful holiday season, that you know that I appreciate all that you've done, and that we are all a team that's getting ready for hopefully a wonderful semester ahead. So Katherine, I'd turn it over to you next.
Thank you, Pat. Hi, everyone. I'm Katherine Erwin, the Chief Human Resources Officer, and I am, like Pat, very delighted to be here today and very grateful to Staff Council for hosting this town hall. I don't want to repeat what Pat has said, but I do want to say that I get everything he said. He covered a lot, and every piece of it is very important, and I share the same perspective. So I just want you all to know that for starters. I too want to take a moment to thank Staff Council and to share with all of you the importance of Staff Council on the campus and the importance of the relationship that they have developed with the administration. So with people like Pat and me and others. They really are a dedicated group. You know, you've elected them into these roles and they take that role very seriously. And they are really excellent at elevating issues that are important to you and bringing them to our attention so that we can collaborate and work together on how to solve for the things that matter to you. So want to thank Staff Council. I also deeply want to thank all of you for the reasons that Pat has already talked about. The campus would not be where it is right now. We would not be able to fulfill the mission of the university, particularly in this pandemic, without the super important work that all of you are doing. You are making it possible for the university to achieve its mission. And I want you to know that is not lost on any of us. And we value you very deeply for the work that you're doing. Given that, I want to take a minute to say how important it is that we take care of each other and that you're able to take care of yourself as we're going through this. And along those lines, Pat talked about the Employee Learning Week. I just want to say that your professional development matters a lot to us, and we've got some great resources in HR to support your professional development and growth. We've got guidance to supervisors to encourage them to allow you time to engage in professional development and growth. So just want to say that that's open to everyone and we want your participation. And we are thrilled with how many of you were able to participate in Employee Learning Week. But then of course we have this stuff going on all year long. So continue to check it out. I also want to spend a moment particularly on leave for a second, because I think our well-being is tied a little bit to our ability to, yes, be engaged at work, but also take a step back from work from time to time, as we all need to rejuvenate. And so, you know, we have generous sick and annual leave on the campus. I think it's important to remind us all that we earn that leave. It's yours. You're entitled to use it. And so, you know, if you're feeling a need to take a vacation, well, that's what you've earned that leave for. And of course, the sick leave there is there as well for you to be able to use if you yourself are sick or a family member is sick. So for starters, you've got that. The other thing that we tried to do this year in honor of you was to offer to the departments on campus the ability to offer administrative leave over the winter break. And to my delight, most departments on campus are able to do this. Some may not be able to for business reasons or finance reasons, but by and large, our departments are committed to giving you that break. And so hopefully many of you have heard that you are going to get that week of December 28th is actually what it is, to January 31st as administrative leave. You don't have to use your own leave to take that time off for the vast majority of you. And then another reminder is about our holidays. We have 10 holidays as state employees that we get. And it doesn't necessarily mean that each and every one of us can take that holiday on the day that it's offered. Like, I know some of you had to work on July 4th, for example. But what it does mean is that you are entitled to 10 holidays. So if you have to work on one of the designated holidays, then you get it on another day that you work out with your supervisor. On that note of holidays, I also want to mention, because I know it's been on a lot of people's minds, that March 26th, Friday, March 26th, which is our spring break day. Normally, every year, the Boulder campus has offered that as a holiday. We're not planning on changing that this year. And so no decision has been made to move that date. So that date is still a holiday on the books for you this year. I want to also say, as we're thinking about protecting each other and taking care of ourselves, that, you know, we just continue all to wear our masks, all to take advantage of the testing that is available on campus, making sure that you continue to do that through these holidays. You can even bring your families in to get tested over the holidays and then into the next year. So I think with that, I'll stop and turn it back over to Hannah.
Perfect. Thank you both. Like I had mentioned at the beginning, we are moving into the question and answer period. So I'll start with those pre-submitted questions, but please feel free to use the chat feature and we will be monitoring that chat in there to ask additional questions. The first question is regarding distribution of COVID vaccines. So when they become available, are there any plans to distribute COVID vaccines to staff, faculty, and students on campus?
So the short answer is that it depends. The first wave of vaccine distribution, which is wave one, is really limited in terms of who has priority access to it. And that's limited to people who are healthcare professionals and really in the realm of first responders. We do have some people on campus who fall in the category of being healthcare workers and first responders, such as our staff at Wardenburg. So we will be receiving some ability to vaccinate them. It's when you get into the later waves that we'll be getting vaccine that will be available for the population more generally. But what we know is that the 18 to 64-year-old population, unless they are having some type of medical comorbidities, are not in the first groups of people who are going to get vaccinated. There are some exceptions to that, and one of the things that they do mention are people who work in high density places. So we're going to have to see when that vaccine becomes available and what the distribution schedule is. But we're committed that as soon as vaccine becomes available for the population on campuses, that we're going to be trying to make sure that people get that as rapidly as possible. But what we don't have any control over is what the distribution scheme itself is, which is determined by the state.
Great, thank you. Kind of following up with some additional questions about vaccines. When they are available, will they be required on campus? And then a separate question, will the university actively participate in getting frontline staff access to vaccinations?
So I'll answer the second part first, which is, I think I just did, which is we don't determine the prioritization that comes from the state. So we don't have any ability to move our frontline workers up in the distribution schedule that comes from the state. But as soon as our frontline workers are eligible under the distribution schedule, we'll be working as hard as we can to make sure that we have vaccine available for them. As to the question of whether or not we would require employees to get vaccinated, right now the answer to that is no. Currently, the vaccines are all considered, they're all being done under what's called an emergency use authorization. And that means that technically it's still an experimental drug. As a matter of ethics, it's really not appropriate to require people to take an experimental drug if they have chosen not to. We would encourage people to take the vaccine when it's available to them. So far, the reports on it have been good in terms of what the side effects are, as well as the effectiveness of the vaccine. And the sooner that we can use it to be able to create a greater degree of normalcy would be great. But it's not something that we're currently looking at from a job requirement.
Okay. Next question is, how do campus closures affect staff who work both on and off campus to support courses as far as admin leave versus working?
Katherine, would you want to address that one?
Sure. All right, let me make sure I understand. So campus, if the campus is closed, how does those that work on campus, how does it impact those that normally work on campus versus those that maybe are remote? I hope I'm getting that right. So for a campus closure, normally what that means is that employees are receiving administrative leave for that day. And that is still, that's true. That is still true this currently and in the future. And so for those of you, what that really means is those that are essential workers, and essential workers defined to mean those that are in your offer letter. It says that you're an essential employee and that you have to come in on closure days to be able to do things like shovel snow or perhaps police. And I'm sure there are other roles that I'm not thinking of right now. But if you're an essential employee and you may be asked to come in on a closure day, everyone else is able to not come in on a closure day. And part of that reason is we're closing the campus because usually it's inclement weather. We want to keep people safe, et cetera. So if you're an essential worker, though, you may need to come in that day to take care of necessary duties. And if so, then you're given another day of admin leave. I hope I answered that.
So I think the person who asked the question is actually clarifying in the chat right now. So they say, this was my question about the campus closure. To clarify, in my position, we are on campus to supervise labs, but when classes are remote, we are off campus supporting remotely. So it's confusing to us because classes are happening remotely, but we will have admin leave and won't be working, and there won't be anyone available to TA to support their teaching.
So I think in that case, you're thinking of that period between, we were planning to be, so it's not really that the campus is closed under what I'm hearing now. It's that we're in remote learning mode. So while we're in that period of remote learning and the students aren't physically on campus for the most part, what would somebody who has support plays a role in the learning and teaching of students, not instructors, but staff that play a role in that, what would they do?
Catherine, can I make a suggestion here, which is that I think we may be getting into something with the guidance that we did earlier with what happened when we would have closures with remote learning. Maybe it would be better for us to follow up on this particular question and get out some guidance so people know what's expected when on the campus closure issue. Because if this question is out there, it might be confusing for supervisors as well, and we can just look at following up to provide some more clarity that way.
I think that's a great suggestion, Pat. We will do that. Well, HR will send out some guidance on what to do in the scenario proposed here.
Great, thank you. The next question is there a possibility that our weekly saliva tests will be switched to a more reliable weekly nasal PCR test?
Highly unlikely. And there's two reasons for that. Number one is that our capacity for the PCR test is more limited in terms of what our laboratory capabilities are. Number two is that the PCR test, in terms of both its sensitivity and its accuracy, is proving to be very good. We've actually got to the point where it has been, all of the data has compiled and will be submitted to the state so that it can be used for diagnostic purposes in the same way that the nasal PCR is, because the degree of sensitivity and reliability is proving to be just about as accurate as the PCR tests themselves. So there were some questions about the saliva-based tests early on, but they've worked on refining those, and they're a very accurate tool.
Okay. Will all returning students have to take a COVID test before coming back to campus after winter break?
So we're working on the testing strategies, and it's one thing that we are actually going to take advantage of the time with the remote start to be able to continue to refine those. We, like in the fall, we were able to test all of the students who were living on campus, and we're going to continue doing that as part of their move-in process. For students who are living in the community, we're still building out those testing capabilities and really figuring out how it would be that we would get to all of them, given that not all of them come to campus, not all of them come to campus on the same duration, and we don't have the same degree of knowledge about what they're doing as the ones who are living in the residence halls. But the testing team is working on some strategies to be able to increase that. They've done a really remarkable job over the course of the last semester in terms of increasing the capabilities. When we started in the fall semester, we had the ability to run about 1,000 tests per day. By the time we get back in February to in-person instruction, that will be a number that is probably going to be closer to about 4,000 tests per day, which is one of the reasons that we were able to offer the ability to test not only all faculty and staff, but even the family members, because we've created really great capacity. Now we have to make sure that we're using it well.
Okay, thank you. So these next three questions are actually about specific dates for the spring semester. It seems like there's some confusion about how about the dates. So one question is asking, the students are scheduled to be off on President's Day, February 15th. Will campus close that day?
So I think the thing to think about is it's not really the campus is closing. And Pat, I haven't heard anything to suggest that that day is changing, but I'll let you answer.
Now, I mean, with our change to the spring schedule that we announced yesterday, we aren't planning on changing that day. There's been too many faculty who have developed their instructional schedules based upon it. But it would be inaccurate to say that the campus is going to be closed that day. We're still going to be performing a lot of the activities that we need to do in order to support the students who are here, and to continue on a lot of the business function. It is not being treated as a holiday for campus closure type of purposes. And I know I'm getting the terminology there wrong, but it is not a holiday.
Okay. The next question is about March 26th. You mentioned that March 26th would still be a holiday day off, but the students' wellness day is the day before March 25th. Does this mean that faculty and staff would have a different day off than students, or would students also have March 26th off?
So the holiday is specifically for employees. So it does not impact students the same way. And I think many of you have probably heard that whereas students normally would get a spring break week, because of the schedule that we have, starting remote and then going to in-person not until mid-February, we're not planning to do the full spring break for students this year. Staff, on the other hand, have for years been given us one day off the week of spring break, which has been the spring break holiday. And so while spring break for students has changed, we have not made any decision to move that spring break holiday day for staff. So to sum it up, March 26th is the holiday for staff. March 25th, I believe, is the day the students have.
Thanks for that clarification. The next question is, what will be the employee status of essential staff while the school is closed until February 14th? I believe that question is referring to the remote status of campus until February 14th.
Yep, and I think I tried to address that earlier. Obviously, people should be working with their supervisors to understand what the change to remote instruction means for their day-to-day employment duties. But we're not anticipating any type of furloughing or layoffs during that period between when the semester was ordinarily going to start with some in-person instruction and the change to remote. Assuming that we're able to keep that schedule, I think we're going to be in good shape. But people should be working with their own supervisors on what schedules are and duties over that period.
Okay. All right, some of the cloth masks, the plain black ones provided to dining staff, are starting to deteriorate at this point. Will additional cloth masks be provided for the next semester?
I think we do have supplies of that PPE, and so please have your supervisors reach out, and we'll make sure that we've got masks available for them.
Great. All right. Many frontline staff are experiencing the burdens and stress of added responsibilities due to vacancies in their area. What is the plan for balancing budgetary needs with supporting current staff workload in occupational emotional well-being?
Katherine, do you want to start with that one?
Sure. It's a really good question. I think across the board, employees have been feeling really stretched during this time. And we are constantly looking at the fiscal needs of the campus and the welfare of our employees, and how to balance that as carefully as we possibly can to ensure that you have what you need, and also that the campus is, you know, fiscally healthy. And so, you know, we'll continue to try and fill those positions that are necessary to help your teams run. I'm imagining we're thinking perhaps of custodial and dining positions, although I don't know that that's where that question came from, because I know there's stress on all areas across campus. But we are looking carefully at where we have gaps and where we can try to fill. It's not always as easy as saying we want to fill a position. Sometimes it's hard to fill these positions. And so we're looking at strategies to incentivize people to want to come and work in positions where we have gaps. So we continue to work on that and work with your supervisors. I'm sorry, I don't have a more perfect answer to that, but we're aware of it, and we are trying to target those areas that are in most need of positions being filled.
And I would just follow up by saying that we have never implemented a full hiring freeze. Throughout the course of the last spring and into the fall semester, there has always been the need for us to be able to hire positions as necessary in order to make sure that the campus can have its needs met. But we have asked supervisors to look carefully and to make sure that we're being smart about what our staffing is. One of the things that we've been able to do is to avoid deeper layoffs and furloughs by having people hold positions open where they can. And that's been really important. But that we know that there needs to be hiring done strategically in order to make sure that we're meeting the mission and meeting the goals. Things that will be, and I'll be encouraging the folks in my organizations to do, is to check back in with their supervisors, to be able to check back in with their units, to make sure that we are identifying those areas where we do need to hire in order to be able to provide the right levels of support, and to be addressing that strategically rather than thinking about it as being off limits. So we'll continue to send that message.
So there's another similar question. It has a couple of additional parts, but I'll go ahead and ask the first part. Frontline staff are feeling very burnt out, and I see this trend continuing when we resume work in 2021. What does the administration plan to do to address the burnout in its staff? And then the additional note was, please address the inequities between those who can work from home and those who can't. It doesn't feel appropriate or equitable that someone who continuously exposes themselves to campus life is compensated the same as someone who can safely work from home.
So I think some of the things that we're trying to do is to recognize the stress that people are facing. And one of the reasons why the Chancellor authorized the admin days that are over the holiday is in recognition of not only the work that's being done, but the additional stress that people have felt. And I wouldn't want to pretend that people haven't felt those type of stresses. And I also understand that there are concerns that there are some people who need to respond to campus, and that the jobs really need to be effectively done on campus in order for the campus to thrive versus some people who have the ability to work remotely. What I will tell you is that we need to be attentive to what's going on in the units and trying to make sure that we're addressing stress where it exists. But we haven't been able to, and probably won't be able to do things like provide hazard pay for people who are generally coming to campus. If we did so, that would be in a position where we wouldn't be able to maintain employment at the same levels that we did if we were increasing compensation to do that. So I don't want to hold out the expectation that we're going to be able to change what people's pay structure is based upon whether or not they're coming to campus or whether or not they're working remotely. That wouldn't be an accurate promise for me to make, and I don't want to make a commitment to you that I'm not going to be able to honor.
Great. All right. Will there be tracking of who has had the vaccine and who has not on campus?
I mean, for when we've identified, for example, healthcare workers who are eligible to receive the vaccine in that first distribution, yeah, we'll know who we've identified as being within that population. What we haven't done is figured out what the broader tracking will be because we haven't created a requirement for people to be vaccinated. We probably won't be in a situation where we're identifying each of the individuals who have chosen to be vaccinated or not. Now, that may be something that changes once the vaccine becomes approved and is a designated therapeutic, and we're going to have to look at that point in time about what we need to do to maintain records. But at least in the initial phases, I don't see us having a full-blown tracking system for vaccine, other than given that the vaccine itself, several of them have to be administered in 2 doses. And so if somebody signs up to be vaccinated and they're being vaccinated on campus through one of our healthcare mechanisms, we would need to know who those people are so that we can make sure they get the appropriate follow-up dosing.
Okay, thank you. Right. For staff that must be on campus, it has been increasingly difficult to commute to campus given that options such as busing have become a COVID risk. Are there any plans to offer free or discounted parking passes to ease the burden of commuting?
That's a good question, and I'll be honest, I haven't thought about that. Let me go back and talk to Carla Hoa, who is our CFO, and also parking reports up through her, so that I can give a better answer to that, because I hadn't thought about it, but it's a legitimate point.
Great, thank you. All right. Will the refunds for housing and dining for on-campus students for the month of mid-January to mid-February heavily impact student affairs salaries? I realize that 50% of housing and dining revenue supports student affairs budgets, but I'm wondering about job cuts. I'm guesstimating that the total house dining refunds might total approximately 25 to 40 million.
That number is actually inaccurate. We don't think it's going to be that magnitude of housing and dining refunds. And like I said earlier, we're not anticipating layoffs and furloughs in order to be able to, in the housing and dining staff, in order to be able to make it through that period of remote instruction. Those are things that we're going to be looking to address on the campus without having to interrupt employment, because we know that it will be much more difficult to be able to resume when we come back. If we were in the unfortunate situation where we had to be remote for the whole semester, we would have to look at staffing for those months. But I'm really hopeful that based upon the disease projections, that we're not going to be in that position. So far, we've seen in the past few weeks, and if you think about how the COVID dial works, we really are trying to get below a number in the Boulder community of 350 cases per 100,000 people at any given time. And even a few weeks ago, we were up at that 800 or 900 person range. That's come down substantially over the past couple of weeks, even with the expected bump that we were going to get in cases over Thanksgiving. That hasn't been as big of a bump as we thought it might be. And if the same type of trend lines hold true post-Christmas and post-New Year's, I'm feeling pretty good about the projections about where we're going on the disease curve, so that we will be able to resume, and we're not looking at that possibility of being remote for the spring semester.
All right, so that is actually all of the submitted questions that we have. So I'd encourage anyone who's on the call, if you have any questions or concerns, please drop them in that chat. There was something that was expressed, just if you could address the lack of communications from the director level down. It seems like some things aren't being distributed to staff. I'm not entirely sure if that's in regards to something specific, but I think more just about the communication chains.
Yeah. Without knowing the specifics, it's tough to address. What I will say is the university is big, and it's we've got lots of different units, we've got lots of directors, we got lots of supervisors. And so we know that the communication isn't always perfect. That's why we try to make sure that we're putting big announcements in things like CUB2 when we have major announcements, that we get them out through emails directly. But this is a good reminder for those of us who are supervisors to make sure that we're checking in with our uplines. And we're going to continue to work on improving those communications. If there are particular gaps that you're identifying, please let us know so that we're in a position. And the other thing that I would really want to encourage you is, Katherine mentioned it earlier, Dylan, Shelby, Chris have done a remarkable job as the staff council reps to be able to tell us what your concerns are, to be able to advocate for you, to be able to tell us when we have communication that's breaking down. So please also let staff council know when you've got concerns, so that we can make sure that we're using them as being able to also fill some of those communication gaps. And I'm really thankful for the work that they've done.
Can I add to that a little bit? I think another resource that is really important for staff to keep in mind is both the COVID site is still very, very good and very complete, and provides a wealth of information for staff about questions that you may have. But also on the HR side, there is a COVID specific area that is, and Lisa just put it in the chat for you, where we really do try to document all the communications that have gone out that impact your leave or employment or anything in any way. And so if you're not used to looking at the HR website, and right now we're talking specifically about the COVID section for communications, I would recommend that you give that a try, because I think you'll see there's a wealth of information there.
Great, okay. It looks like there's a follow-up from that comment about the lack of communication. The person says that they've heard most of the announcements from the chancellor level emails, and only have gotten a few updates from their unit. It feels like their department specific information was lacking. And it seems like that was a sentiment echoed throughout that area. I'm not sure if you guys have anything to address of how, maybe director levels can be more aware that staff are wanting information from their specific areas.
We'll raise that with our folks. Sometimes I think we probably run into a situation where if a chancellor level email comes out, people say, oh, well, the chancellor sent out an email. But how that might impact different units is something that, given that the chancellor is talking to the whole campus, doesn't have that level of detail. So we'll remind people that they should probably be in a position to make sure that they followed up with people after big communications, to try to make sure we're addressing their concerns.
Great. And just as a note, that was for the housing area is where that came from. This next question says, while this question is intended for on-campus staff, can you briefly, can you briefly touch on the plan for those working remotely? I'm unable to attend next week's session. So I think this person is just wondering what the plan is moving forward for the spring, who is currently working remotely, it sounds like, if the plan is to continue working remotely for the spring semester.
Yeah, it's the same thing, which is that we are going to be in a position where each unit needs to look at their own staffing. There will be some folks who are working remotely, and if they've been working remotely, they may continue to work remotely. But we've asked the supervisors to go back and look at it. We're going to have a greater degree of classes being offered in person. We also know that we're really trying to increase the experiences that are available on campus. So that might change some of the staffing requirements for the spring semester, but that's really something that needs to be on a unit by unit basis. We don't want to have people on campus unnecessarily while we've still got a desire to keep campus density low, but that we also really need to be thinking about it from a university first perspective and what's going to create the experience that's going to keep the students retained and allow us to be able to deliver a really good incoming class next year, because that's going to be the best thing that is going to bring us back to budgetary health.
Okay. Related to compensation, is there any chance that hazard pay would kick in February?
No, not currently. I don't have any belief that hazard pay will be offered anytime during the spring semester.
Okay. All right, I'm just scrolling through here. I see a couple more coming in. Okay. This question says, does working remotely start the week after admin paid week, December 28th through 1/1/21, or does it start January 14th, the beginning of the spring semester?
For those people who are working remotely, if they're taking the admin time, if they would ordinarily beginning their employment for the semester in the first week of January, they should continue to do so. People who are working remotely after the holidays are over, I would assume would return to a normal work schedule. Is that accurate, Katherine?
Yes, if you're working remotely, you'll work remotely through that February 15th date. If you normally work on campus, I think the best to say, because it's going to flex a little bit depending on where you are, is to work with your upline, your supervisor, and your director of your area to understand scheduling. I think there may be some rotations going on. There's a lot of work to be done while our students aren't here. And so it may be that you are still working full-time on campus. It may be that you're on a rotation, but either way, it will not impact your salary.
All right, one other question here. Student employees are a unique population. For instance, most of them will have to work on the wellness days. Is there anything being planned to support them specifically? Most of them are frontline workers as well.
This is the first time that anyone's raised that concern for me with the student employees. So why don't we, Katherine, go back and talk about that as well. So I appreciate that being brought to our attention as something we might need to consider.
Great, thank you. Can you take the admin time after 1/1/21?
The only people who would be able to take the admin leave after the first of the year are people who would not be able to take it and their units have offered it during that period. So if, for example, admission says we're offering our folks that admin leave, but we need 2 people to work that week. Those 2 people would be able to take it. But if it's otherwise been offered to you and you would be otherwise able to take it during that week, you can't defer it.
Okay. All right. I thought it was stated earlier that there is no plan for furloughs or layoffs beginning in January. Yesterday, I received an email from my supervisor advising that Student Affairs is planning to furlough university staff whose compensation is above a certain level, 1 day per month beginning in January and ending in May. Are any other departments planning furloughs?
First, I'm not aware of what was communicated in Student Affairs, and I'll look into that. But I am not aware of any other departments that are anticipating any layoffs or furloughs.
Okay. That is the end of the questions that have came in. I don't see any others that are unanswered in there. I know we have a couple minutes left. Pat, Catherine, I don't know if you guys want to address anything before we wrap up.
I just want to end with where I started, which is by recognizing first that it's been an awfully hard semester. We've worked our way through it, and I appreciate everything that everybody's done. It's going to be something where we're going to continue to work through the issues ahead of us together. You've given us some things that we recognize that we need to continue doing better, and we're going to come back from this discussion, and I'll talk with my teams about how to do it. But really, this is a time also to be able to celebrate the successes that we've had over the past several months. People thought that we weren't going to be able to get through the fall semester, and for the most part, we did. We were able to deliver a good experience for students. We were able to change the way in which people work, learn, and I appreciate the resiliency that everybody has shown. It's been remarkable. Please take some time for yourself. I know how hard people are working. I see it with my team too. It will help you be better at work. It will help you be better at home. And please continue to be kind, be empathetic towards each other. Make sure that you are giving everybody a little bit of grace during what are really hard times. And know that it's really important for the university that you are well. So thank you for all you've done. And as a final reminder, please do get tested. We're in a situation where we're different than just about any other employer in the state. We've got this capacity for people to get tested. We can take care of our own community. And when we do so, it's the right thing to do. So thank you. And thank you for having me here today. It really is an honor to be able to work with you and to try to make the university a better place.
And again, I just want to second what Pat said. He said it very well. The only thing that I want to add is just a reminder that for those of you that do continue to have questions, that do continue to feel that you're not hearing from your directors, the feedback that's being shared with them. Another really important avenue, of course, is your own staff council. So please do remember to continue to funnel your questions and issues and concerns to them as well. And in closing, I just want to say thank you so much for allowing me to be here today with all of you. And I wish you all a healthy and safe winter break, and look forward to partnering with Staff Council and with all of you in the new year.
Great. Thank you both for joining us, and thanks for all the hardworking staff who were able to take the time and join us as well. We hope we were able to answer your questions and provide some clarity about the state of campus. If you do have additional questions, you can always email staffcouncil@colorado.edu, and we can direct those as appropriate. And take care and have a good snowy Friday, everyone.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye, guys.